Part 8. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 71. Osman thus is very willing to take on such a job. Raising chickens is not troublesome, just throw some wild vegetables, or dig some bugs for the chickens to eat. To buy meat is to walk to town, but it is only a few miles away. In this way, she can still earn 10 cents a day, which is better. Guyunjiao put down the meat and vegetables, caught the carp from the pot, and put it in the basket of sweet-scented Osman. Thus, I caught it myself and brought it back to Yingzi to eat. By the way, I have ginger here, you can use a piece to make fish. She broke a piece of ginger and put it in the basket. Osman thus was embarrassed. This. Guyunjiao smiled, sister-in-law, remember my words and try to eat as much meat and eggs as possible. She pointed to the fish in the sweet-scented Osman thus basket. The same is true for fish, including shrimp, eel, and loach. The more you don't eat meat, the worse your health will be. If you get sick, you won't spend a little bit. Osman thus nodded vigorously. After eating some meat in the past few days, she always felt that Yingzi's little face seemed to be rounder, and she seemed to be walking a little more. She cruelly bought a hen that lay eggs yesterday, and she also bought some chicks to keep, intending to eat an egg every day. Osman thus moved a small stool and sat down, swiftly helping Guyunjiao choose dishes, and then jokingly said, "Does Drgu know about Atai? I just came to your house, and I heard Aunt Li scolding at the door of the house, saying that the boy lost his mind and went crazy. He ran into her pigsty and took the feces of her sow in a basin. Auntie Li said he was hungry, so take it back to eat. Alas, this motherless child is also pitiful." Guyunjiao smiled, Atai's ability to act is really strong. Osman thus was still shaking her head. In the past, when his mother was still there and there was no sore, she was a very beautiful child, but now she is like this. Guyunjiao took the opportunity to say, "So, you have to be willing to eat something good yourself, otherwise, if you have something, Yingzi is even worse than him." Osman thus shuddered, I've listened to you recently, and I'm not reluctant to eat or drink like I used to." After choosing the dishes, Osman thus thanked again, and then left with the basket. Guyunjiao decided to make a Crucian carp meatball soup at noon, fried shredded carrots, and then fried eel. She was worried when she saw the eel, it was slippery and she couldn't catch it. What should I do? Remembering that Rokuro caught the eel, and as soon as he caught it, she ran to the door and shouted, "Rokuro!" Rokuro ran quickly, "Sister-in-law, what's the matter?" Guyunjiao pursed her lips, "What should I do with the eel? I can't catch it, and I can't cut it. You have to help me catch it, and I'll find a way to cut it." Lu Lang ran over, "I will dissect it, sister-in-law, just watch it. However, I have to find something first." After speaking, Rokuro ran out again. After a while he came in, took a plank and placed it on the stove, with an iron nail in his hand. Guyunjiao was very surprised, watching Rokuro catch an eel, and then nailed the eel's head to the wooden board with iron nails. Then press the knife from the head of the eel, and pull the knife to the tail, and the eel is cut open. Rokuro tore out the eel's intestines, and then used a knife to remove the eel's spine. Guyunjiao was stunned beside her. Although Rokuro's movements are not too skilled, he handled it very well. She sincerely applauded, "Rokuro, you are too smart, this is a good way." Rokuro was a little happy, but said in an instant and sadly, "I used to see that eldest brother was killed like this. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth." Author, Jinkui. Chapter 72. Guyunjiao watched Ruku's movements become more and more skilled, and walked away with confidence to cut the meat. At this time, Mrs. Chen also came in, and when he saw Lu Lang killing the eel, he said in surprise, "Oh, I don't see that my son still has this ability." Rokuro was happier and worked harder. Guyunjiao chopped the meat, Chen Shi waited for Lu Lang to kill the eel, and asked Gu Yunjiao, and cut the carp up. After the rice was cooked, Gu Yunjiao made the Crucian carp meatball soup, and Mrs. Chen cut the eel into pieces and fry them in the pot. The sticky saliva on the eel should be fried, otherwise it will not look good or taste good. After frying the eel saliva dry, Mrs. Chen took out a bowl and washed the pot. Gu Yunjiao suddenly said, "Mother, wait a minute, I'll get some ingredients first." She ran out quickly, not far away, saw the perilla growing on the side of the road, pulled it out and ran back. Wash the basil and put it on a plate, then take a plate of sliced meat and put it on the stove. Chen Shi looked at Shi Su, "Do you want this fried eel? Isn't this a weed? Is it edible?" Gu Yunjiao nodded, "If you can eat it, put this last and fry it to make it fragrant." She pointed to the sliced meat again, "The meat is fried with eel." Chen Shi said in surprise, "My mother, this bowl of eel has to be fried with meat." Gu Yunjiao shook her head, "Actually, it's better to stew with bacon and add some chili peppers. The taste is really amazing. Unfortunately, it's not the season to eat bacon." Chen Shi sighed, "Dr. Gu's family is not a wealthy family, and I don't know why Gu Yunjiao is so particular about eating eel. This is better than the lady she served before." But thinking that this meat was all Gu Yunjiao's own money, Chen Shi didn't say anything. She put the fat meat into the pot and simmered the oil. At this time, the pigs were eating all natural things. The meat was really fragrant. Once the fat meat was simmered, the fragrance overflowed instantly. Gu Yunjiao's cooking skills are not very good. In her previous life, she had read some interesting recipes, but she had never cooked. In this life, after her father disappeared, she learned a little from the servants at home, and her cooking skills were mediocre. Chen's cooking skills are not good either. In the past, when she was a maid, she didn't have to cook. After marrying into the Zhang family, she basically only ate green vegetables, and she didn't have much room for development. However, as long as the cooking is willing to put oil and the amount of salt is right, the taste will not be bad. Seeing that Mrs. Chen was about to fry the eel, Gu Yunjiao put all the perilla leaves in the plate, and stirred it for a few more times before serving. The Crucian carp meatball soup was also good. Mr. Chen saw that there was still some oily juice in the eel pot after frying, so he was reluctant to wash the pot, so he threw down a handful of spinach and quickly fry it. The kitchen was remodeled from the south side of the room, and there was only a door separated from Zhang Yuzi's room. When the door was opened, there was no need to go out, and the food was served. At this time, the main room was also eating. Kilang looked at the radishes and cabbage on the table, and pouted, "Rokuro's family is eating meat again today, and I can smell the meat." Mr. Zhang didn't say anything, and Mrs. Zhou sternly said, "If you want to eat meat, ask your mother to buy it for you, don't scream here." Kilang's aggrieved flat mouth suddenly shouted, "I didn't eat meat before because I wanted to save money to study for the third brother. Now that the third brother is not from our family, why can't we eat meat?" Joshi burst out, "I love to eat, but if I don't eat, get out." Kilang suddenly threw down his chopsticks and ran out, "I don't want to eat it, I eat green vegetables every day, I don't want to eat green vegetables anymore." Mr. Lu put down his chopsticks and ran out, "Kilang, come back to me soon, if you run out of food in a while, you'll have to starve." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 73. Zhou's voice was loud, and Kilang didn't hide his words. The few people who had just sat down by Zhang Yuzi's bed and were about to eat could hear them clearly. Sanya whispered, "Grandma cursed again." Gu Yunjiao was once again glad that the family was separated, otherwise, at this time, it was her who was scolded again. Rokuro's attention was all on the bowls of vegetables in front of him, and he rubbed his hands excitedly. It's great, they're all delicious dishes, I feel like it's New Year's Day every day after the family is separated. Chen-shi said angrily, you are the only one who talks a lot. Eat them all. She first fed Zhang Yuzi a piece of eel, and then she began to eat it. Gu Yunjiao couldn't wait to taste the eel, and it tasted pretty good. The Crucian carp meatball soup was stewed into a milky white color, and sprinkled with green onions. She took a small bowl and scooped it out and tasted it slowly. After drinking a sip of the soup, Gu Yunjiao sighed contentedly, and inadvertently said what was in her heart, this is how people live. Sanya asked innocently, sister-in-law, what kind of life did we live in the past? Gu Yunjiao thought for a while, we used to call it alive, but now we can barely call it life. Although this life is still 108,000 miles away from her standard. Sanya and Rokuro seemed to understand but not understand. While eating the eel, Rokuro said, then I want to live, I don't want to live like before. Zhang Yuzi stared at Gu Yunjiao, he suddenly felt that breaking his leg wasn't a bad thing at all, and there was no possibility of separation if he kept his legs. Regardless of family, where does this happy day come from? Gu Yunjiao seemed to be aware of Zhang Yuzi's gaze and glanced at him. Zhang Yuzi avoided it for some reason. Gu Yunjiao said nonchalantly, wait for another 10 days before Saburo can sit up and eat. After eating, Gu Yunjiao helped bring the tableware and chopsticks to the kitchen, and Sanya built a bench and carefully boiled water to wash the dishes. Gu Yunjiao watched for a while, the process of washing dishes was correct, so she went out with confidence. Lu Lang ran over at this time, and said nervously, I saw the second uncle and the third uncle, with Erlang Shilang Wulang Kilang carrying a bucket and going out, he must have touched the eel. What to do, there are so many of them, the eels will be touched, and I won't be able to catch them tomorrow. He patted his head angrily, it's all my fault. When I came in with a bucket, I shouldn't have shown it to my fourth brother. Just as Gu Yunjiao was about to comfort him, the child began to comfort herself, it's all right, they must be groping in their own fields, not by the river. Gu Yunjiao smiled and patted his head, you are such an optimistic child. Zhang Yuzi in the room raised his voice at this time, Li Alang, don't you want to read, come here quickly, the third brother is just in good spirits now. Rokuro agreed, come on. Gu Yunjiao went back to her room and read a book by herself. She brought a lot of medical books and pulse records from the Gu family, all of which were not available in her previous world, and she planned to spend some time reading all of them. In the afternoon, Rokuro watched Erlang and the others carried buckets into the yard. He craned his neck and saw that there were more than half a bucket of eels in it. Rokuro felt a chill in his heart, and the eels in the entire Qingshan village have been caught by them. After dinner, several children were playing in the yard. Kilang couldn't help showing off, my family is eating eel today, it's really delicious. Rokuro smiled arrogantly, what's so strange, my family ate it too, but made it with meat. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 74. Kilang was stunned, you are talking nonsense, who would use meat to make eel? Rokuro smiled, my family eats like this at noon. My sister-in-law said that it's not delicious to cook with meat. It's better to stew with bacon, that's really fragrant. My sister-in-law must be right. My sister-in-law knows everything. Kilang was finally able to show off for a while, and was compared by Li Alang again. He snorted and walked away gloomily. Gu Yunjiao sat under the window, secretly laughing. In order to eat in one bite, Rokuro is about to become her little brother. 2 days later, this afternoon, while Zhang Yuzi was in good spirits, Gu Yunjiao took his pulse again. Zhang Yuzi's viscera injuries were obviously better, and Gu Yunjiao prescribed another recipe. Seeing her prescribing the prescription, Mrs. Chen said, "Why don't you go to the county town to get medicine tomorrow?" Gu Yunjiao nodded, "I'll go get the medicine and come back." The next day, Gu Yunjiao went out in Lu Er's car after eating breakfast. She had to go to the county seat, but instead of really going to get the medicine, she planned to use the medicine from her own medicine store to save some money, and secondly, the quality of her medicine was the best. Arriving at the county seat, Gu Yunjiao went to the Wang family pharmacy, took the ES back, and then wandered around the street, bought a roast chicken, and a little dried seaweed and dried shrimp, and then found no one. The place flashed into his own medicine store. The medicine store is still the same, and even the lights are still on. Gu Yunjiao looked at the LCD panel that displayed the temperature and humidity, and nothing changed. She went to the counter and started to pick up the medicine. When she caught Sankai, she went to the fine material counter. She grabbed a piece of Panax Noto ginseng and was about to throw it into the powdering machine when her hand suddenly stopped. She was looking at the musk in a sealed glass bottle beside her. The bottle of musk was full. After she took a dozen grams and sold it, there was some space on the top of the bottle. But now the bottle is still full. Gu Yunjiao stared at the bottle for a long time, almost wondering if her memory was disordered. She suddenly patted her head and counted the 3 or 7 in the counter. Her family's Panax Noto ginseng are the best ones with 10 heads, that is, 10 Panax Noto ginseng add up to a pound. She counted, including this one in her hand, a total of 27. After counting, she threw Sankai into the powder beating machine. The grinder turned up as expected. After grabbing the medicine, Gu Yunjiao came out of the medicine store and took a carriage home. As soon as he entered the yard, he saw Rokuro and a child playing with turtles on the ground. Taking a closer look, Gu Yunjiao raised her brows. "Xiao Chuan, why are you here?" Hearing his sister's voice, Gu Chuan dropped the turtle in his hand and rushed up, hugging her waist and crying. Gu Yunjiao was still holding the medicine in both hands, so it was not easy to hug him, so she hurriedly asked, "Why are you crying? Is there something wrong at home?" Lu Lang is really clever. He stepped forward to take the medicine from Gu Yunjiao's hand. "Sister-in-law and Xiao Chuan, go in and talk." Gu Yunjiao then pulled Gu Chuan in and sat down at the table, looked at the tears on his face, and wiped it for him. "Man, don't cry when you don't move, say something carefully, you want to be like a mother, be a good man. Are you crying?" Gu Chuan didn't dare to cry anymore, and said, "Sister, all 10 acres of land in the family are sold." Gu Yunjiao was startled. "What?" She thumped the table. "Mother just can't make sense. So is your eldest sister, why don't you know how to stop it?" The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 75. Gu Chuan shook his head. Eldest sister and mother sold it together. I think they each shared half of the money. I heard them say that the mother wants to use the money to go to Fukin to find the father, and the eldest sister wants to use the money to do the dowry. Gu Yunjiao was so angry. "You didn't tell the second uncle and the third uncle." Gu Chuan cried and said, "I said, but when I knew it, the land had already been sold." The second uncle and the third uncle sternly told the eldest sister to return the money and exchange the land. The eldest sister refused, saying that she had already made a red deed in the government and could not be exchanged. Second uncle also said that when he handed over the money, he would buy a few more acres of land to write my name on, but the eldest sister still refused, saying that she would use the money to buy a dowry. The eldest sister said that she had lost her father in the first place. If she didn't arrange some dowry, she would make her in-laws look down on her, and she couldn't cry. The second uncle and the third uncle couldn't do anything about her. Gu Yunjiao frowned. "What did your mother say?" Gu Chuan lowered his head. "Mother said, she will leave for Fukin tomorrow, the car is ready, let me go with her. But the eldest sister secretly told me not to follow my mother, saying that she would sell me. Gu Yunjiao thought about it, with Li's temperament, if all the money was spent, she might really sell Gu Chuan. Gu Chuan began to cry again. Second sister, I don't dare to go to Fukan with my mother, the eldest sister is going to get married again, I will be alone in the future, second sister, will I follow you? Chen Shi was mending Lu Lang's clothes next door, and when she heard Gu Chuan's words, she paused. Then she heard Gu Yunjiao say, Xiao Chuan, my elder sister wants to take you with me, but my elder sister is married, this place it's just my husband's family. This is the ancient times when a woman married out of the house poured water out of the house. Is there any girl who can still live with her mother-in-law's younger brother to her husband's house? Gu Chuan's sobbing became louder and louder. Second sister, there is not much rice left at home, and the fields are gone, in the future, what am I going to eat, woo woo woo, I'll starve to death, woo 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 dash. Gu Yunjiao didn't know what to do for a while, and after thinking about it, she felt that she could only entrust Gu Chuan to the second uncle. She gave the second uncle a little money every month for Gu Chuan's living expenses. It's just that the days of relying on others will not be easy. At this moment, Mrs. Chen came out of the house. She came out and touched Gu Chuan's head, this child is also pitiful. In that case, let him live in our house. Gu Yunjiao looked at Chen Shi in surprise. Although she knew that Chen's heart was kind and that Zhang Yuzi, who was not her own son, truly loved her, she didn't expect Chen to do this, and even her daughter-in-law's younger brother could accept it. She thought for a while, then stood up and said to Chen Shifu seriously, thank you mother. Chen Shi smiled, thank you, I want to say thank you, I should thank you. Even if Xiao Chuan is here, Rokuro has another playmate. In my opinion, there is no need to buy a bed, just let him and Rokuro sleep in the same bed. Rokuro originally slept in the south side room, but now the side room has been converted into a kitchen, and Rokuro's bed is placed in the main room. Gu Chuan was also sensible, got up and saluted Chen's, thank you aunt for being willing to take me in. Chen Shi hurriedly said, this child is very polite at such a young age. Don't worry, being at your aunt's house is the same as being at your own. Gu Yunjiao looked at Gu Chuan, after lunch, I'll go home with you and bring your clothes and luggage. Gu Chuan nodded again and again. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 76. At this moment, Osman thus shouted outside, Dr. Gu. Gu Yunjiao knew that she had brought food, so she quickly went out to pick it up. When the two arrived in the kitchen, Osman thus took out the items in the basket one by one, there is a beef seller in the town today. I thought of you and said, as long as you come across it, you will sell it, and I will buy it. This beef is really expensive. It cost 30 cents for a pound of beef, which is enough to buy 3 pounds of pork. As she said that, she said embarrassedly, the butcher who sells meat sees me every day to buy meat, and gave me a pair of intestines without asking for my money. She said this deliberately, just to see if Gu Yunjiao wanted this intestine, she would give it to her if she wanted it, and she would keep it for herself if she didn't. Gu Yunjiao smiled, that's good, but I don't like to eat intestines, can my sister-in-law make intestines? Osman thus nodded, I will. I used to watch my mother do it at her mother's house, but it just takes some effort. That's good, sister-in-law, go to work, I won't leave you. Sister-in-law Osman thus saw that Gu Yunjiao didn't want her intestines, and left with gratitude. Gu Yunjiao washed rice and cooked rice. She put the roast chicken wrapped in lotus leaves that she bought from the county seat on the stove. The stove quickly heated up, and the roast chicken was hot. She cut up a little more meat and fry it with celery, made a seaweed egg soup, and put some dried shrimp in it. She tasted it, and it tasted very fresh. There were only 2 dishes, and Mrs. Chen came over to take a look and didn't intervene. When eating, Gu Chuan couldn't let go at first, and he didn't even dare to sandwich the dishes. Chen Shi broke off 2 chicken legs, giving one to Zhang Yuzi and the other to Gu Chuan. Seeing that her sister didn't say anything, Gu Chuan took the chicken thigh. Gu Chuan almost cried when he was eating chicken drumsticks. The last time he ate drumsticks was when his father took him to the county seat. It had been more than half a year. Zhang Yuzi held the drumstick, feeling a little heavy. He wanted to give this drumstick to Rokuro. He saw the desire in Rokuro's eyes. But he also knew that his body really needed nutrition now, and he had to get better soon so that he wouldn't be a drag on the family. He glanced at Rokuro apologetically, and swore in his heart that he would buy many, many drumsticks for Rokuro in the future. After dinner, Gu Yunjiao went to Lu Er's house again and ordered his carriage to go to her mother's house. 7 or 8 miles away, the carriage arrived in just 2/4 of an hour. The yard door was open, the carriage drove in directly, and Gu Yunjiao led Gu Chuan out of the car. Gu Mei heard the movement outside, got up and looked around at the door of the room. When she saw that it was Gu Yunjiao holding Gu Chuan, there was even a hatchet in her waist. Her heart skipped a beat and it was broken. Find her to share the money. After all, when Gu Yunjiao got married, she didn't have any dowry except her clothes and luggage. Gu Mei hurriedly closed the door. Gu Yunjiao just pretended not to see her, went into her father's study, packed all the books in the study into a big box, then looked up with Gu Chuan. Lu Er looked up the other, carried the box and got on the carriage. Gu Mei saw Gu Yunjiao carrying a suitcase into the car from the crack of the door, for fear that Gu Yunjiao took some good things and left. Just as she was about to come out, she thought about it. She had searched the house several times, and there was nothing valuable. Who knows what rubbish Gu Yunjiao collected? Don't go out, lest Gu Yunjiao go crazy. Putting down the suitcase, Gu Yunjiao went to Gu Chuan's room again, packed his clothes with a big burden, rolled up all the quilts and mattresses, and put them in the car. After doing this, Gu Yunjiao went to Li's room. Li Shi seemed to be asleep, lying face inward, motionless. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 77. Gu Yunjiao knew that Mrs. Li was pretending to be asleep and didn't call her, so she found all the books left in a cabinet in the bedroom. She found the household stickers at home from a box, and she quietly put them in her arms. Hearing the sound of rummaging through boxes and cabinets, Mrs. Li couldn't help it. Although the 25 taels of silver she shared were hidden in her quilt, she was still a little worried that Gu Yunjiao would sell her clothes and jewelry. She still has a few satin clothes and 1 or 2 pieces of jewelry, which she will wear to go to Fukan to find Yulang. Li opened her eyes and turned around to see Gu Yunjiao wrapping some books. In that bag, there was nothing but books. She was relieved and closed her eyes again to pretend to be asleep. She also knew that the matter of selling her land was not very worthy of attention. Now that Gu Yunjiao was fierce like a yaksha, she was a little afraid of her, so it was better to pretend to be asleep. In this family, aside from a few books, Gu Yunjiao didn't think there was anything of value. She tied the burden and looked at Mrs. Li on the bed and said, "Mother, I advise you not to go to Fukan." Hearing this, Li opened his eyes, sat up and said stubbornly, "I must go to your father, I'm not as unscrupulous as you." Gu Yunjiao smiled sarcastically, "Mother has never traveled far, does she know about the south, east, north and west? Besides, if you are a woman alone, you are not afraid of being abducted." Li's family is in his early 30s, not too old, and he still has some good looks, so he can sell a few taels of silver. Li Shi shook a little, "No, you just want to scare me." Gu Yunjiao smiled, "Okay, it's up to you." She paused. Where is the deed for this house? Li said vigilantly, what are you going to do? Are you going to sell the house? That's not good. Gu Yunjiao pulled Gu Chuan over. What do I want the house deed for? You take out the house deed and give it to Gu Chuan. You sell the land, so this house is left. This should be left to him, right? Li muttered, that's not good, I can't give it to you, I don't know if you will sell it. Gu Yunjiao said coldly, I'm not as conscientious as you guys. She has looked all over the house, but if she didn't see the house deed, it could only be with the Li family. She fixed her eyes on Li's pillow. Li slept on the bed every day, and the important things were probably hidden on the bed. She strode over and lifted the pillow, which was empty and nothing under it. Li, she panicked, what are you doing, you, are you going to rob me? As she said that, she tightly covered the quilt. Gu Yunjiao was an idiot and could see that something was under the quilt. She grabbed the quilt and pulled hard, and the quilt was torn apart. I saw Li holding a small box in his arms. Li shouted, Mayor, come here, your sister is going to steal my money. Gu Mei heard clearly next door, stood up suddenly, and sat down slowly. There is no benefit for her to mix it in, and she can't get the money horizontally and vertically, so let them quarrel. Gu Yunjiao reached out to Mrs. Li, bring the house deed. Li shrank to the corner of the bed, hugged the box tightly and shook his head. Gu Yunjiao said coldly, don't force me to grab it, I don't like to act like a bandit, but if you really wait for me to do it, your 25 taels of silver won't be able to keep it. She didn't know why, but every time she encountered Li's crying bag, she would be extra impatient. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 78. Li, she started crying when she heard it. She glanced at the door, but did not see Gu Mei's figure, and knew that she couldn't handle Gu Yunjiao. While crying, she opened the box with trembling. What did I do to raise a disobedient and unfilial daughter like you? Yulang. Where are you, my Yulang? Yulang, if you don't come back, I can't live. She cried and dug out the deed from the box, held it in her hand, wanted to hand it out, but was reluctant. Gu Yunjiao motioned to Gu Chuan, go get it. Gu Chuan climbed onto the bed and took the house deed in Li's hand. Gu Yunjiao asked him to put it close to him, and then said, I'll take my brother away, mother, you forget it, that's it. She originally wanted to persuade her mother a few words, thinking that it was unnecessary. Does her mother listen to people's words? Let her do it, she can't stop it. Gu Chuan looked back at his mother at this time. His mother was holding the box tightly with tears in her eyes. She didn't react at all to his departure. Even if it is to tell her to listen to her sister in the future, but no, she is immersed in her own sadness, and there is no him in her eyes. Gu Chuan's heart also cooled down completely at this moment, and he held Gu Yunjiao's hand even harder. Gu Yunjiao carried the burden in one hand and Gu Chuan in the other, came out and put down the things, turned and walked to Gu Mei's house, sneering at the closed door. Gu Mei, you are doing great. I knew you had a dark heart, but I didn't expect your heart to be so dark. First, you cheated on your younger sister to congratulate others, and now, for your own dowry, you are urging your mother to sell the land, and you don't care about your younger brother's life or death. Okay, I'll just wait and see what kind of good life a ruthless person like you can have in the future. Gu Mei couldn't help but say, don't worry, my life is 100 times better than yours. Gu Yunjiao snorted, okay, then let's watch it slowly. Gu Chuan, let's go. Gu Mei hid in the room, sneering again and again. Gu Yunjiao's good days are only a few days away, and now, Zhang Saburo's leg should also be broken. In the last life, the Zhang family was reluctant to give him money to treat his wounds, so the Chen family borrowed money from everywhere to treat him. Later, it seemed that he had pawned a sword of some kind, and only got the money. After several months of treatment, Zhang Saburo's leg was still lame. The Chen family asked her to marry Zhang Sanlang. She was a little reluctant at first and despised him for being lame, but looking at his face, she felt that even if she was lame, she could just take it easy. Who knows, Zhang Saburo is not willing to live or die. It's nice to say that I don't want to drag her down. In fact, I just miss her. She clearly expressed her mind to him several times, saying that she didn't dislike his lame leg, but he just wasn't moved. Later, the Chen family decided to marry her off. She received 50 taels of betrothal money and married her to a widower who looked like a dog and had a daughter at home. At first, she also thought she had met a sweetheart. The man knew a few words and worked as an accountant for people in the county town. At first, the two of them were so good they were so good. But later... oh, forget it, forget it. Gu Yunjiao didn't know that her sister's thoughts had drifted to her previous life, and she had already pulled Gu Chuan onto the carriage. Lu Er quickly drove the car out. Before long, the carriage returned to the village. When the car passed by Zhao Lijhan's house next door, Aunt Sun stood at the gate of the courtyard, looked at the luggage on the carriage, and exaggeratedly said, "Yo, Yunjiao has returned to her mother's house." She covered her mouth and smiled, "There are so many things, I'm afraid I didn't evacuate my mother's house." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 79. Gu Yunjiao did not speak. She also knows a little about Aunt Sun, and she is not bad at heart, otherwise she would not lend money to Chen. It's just too shrewd. The meaning inside and outside the words is that she is worried that if she vacates her parents' house, her future daughter-in-law Gu Mei will lose money. She was too lazy to answer this. Even though Gu Chuan was young, he could hear that there was something wrong in what he said. In the morning, he heard Rokuro say that the next door is the family who is engaged to his eldest sister. Presumably, this is the future mother-in-law of the eldest sister. He couldn't help but said, "There are books here, as well as my clothes and luggage. My eldest sister sold all the land at home and said that she would use the money to buy the dowry. I had no food to eat, so I had to go to my second sister." Aunt Sun opened her mouth, "Ah, this. I can't, isn't this family's field all reserved for the male, how can she be qualified to sell it?" At this time, the carriage had stopped in front of Jiang's house, and Gu Chuan jumped out of the car and said loudly, "She's got a black heart. Seeing that I'm still young, she bullied me." When Aunt Sun heard this, her face turned red and white, and she went into the house. Next door, Lu Er helped Gu Yunjiao carry things in. Some of the people in the second and third bedrooms watched from the window, some from the door, and some from the yard. They didn't know that Gu Chuan was going to live in this house. At this moment, everyone's thoughts are similar to what Aunt Sun thinks. With such a big box and such a big burden, this is to evacuate the mother's house. Yang Shi stared at the big box and began to regret it again. At that time, she was fighting for 5 taels of silver, and it was time to marry Gu Yunjiao for Erlang, so she would go to her husband's house, and the 5 taels of silver would come back soon. Sanya ran over to help Gu Yunjiao put things away. The box of books was all placed in the ear room where Gu Yunjiao and Sanya slept. Gu Yunjiao also arranged Gu Chuan's clothes and luggage for him. She pointed to Li Alang and said to Gu Chuan, "In the future, when Brother Saburo is in good spirits, you and Li Alang will read with Brother Saburo. Next time I'll go to the county seat and buy some paper and pens for the two of you. Once you recognize the characters, you have to practice them, otherwise, you will forget them every 2 days. Besides, you are not familiar with the children in this village. It's better to follow Brother Li Alang when you go out to play, lest people bully you. Gu Chuan nodded vigorously, I see. Rokuro smiled and put his arm on Gu Chuan's shoulder, don't worry, sister-in-law, no one can bully brother Xiao Chuan with me. After packing her luggage, Gu Yunjiao hurried into the kitchen to make dinner. There is beef today, but Gu Yunjiao looks a little worried. In her previous life, she lived in a spicy province, and in her recipe, beef must have peppers. But now, Zhang Yuzi is still ill and cannot eat spicy food. She suddenly didn't know what to do. She tried hard to recall the beef she had eaten, the salt-fried beef with dried chili powder. Cumin beef, forget it, no cumin here. Beef stir-fry, no, fresh chili peppers. Gu Yunjiao swallowed and twisted her fingers, thinking that she saw a few potatoes on the ground. This is from Osman thus. Gu Yunjiao quickly decided to make a beef stew with potatoes, which can be eaten without the peppers. She quickly cut the beef into pieces and marinated it with cooking wine and soy sauce. Once marinated, start cooking. After the rice is cooked, sauté the ginger and garlic until fragrant, then stir-fry the beef, then transfer it to a crock pot and simmer slowly with water. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 80. The flavor of the beef is unusual. In particular, butter is particularly fragrant. Generally, in order to enhance the freshness and fragrance of hot pot bases, butter is required. Lu Lang took Gu Chuan and quickly came in smelling the smell. Sister-in-law, what is this delicious made, how is it more fragrant than meat? Gu Yunjiao smiled, it's still meat, but beef. Rokuro jumped up, it's great, I've never eaten it before, I heard that beef is especially delicious. Gu Yunjiao pondered in her heart that after eating beef tonight, it is estimated that Rokuro will have the money to show off with others when he goes out. The dining table was still placed beside Zhang Yuzi's bed. A large bowl of beef stew and potatoes was steaming hot in the middle of the table. Zhang Yuzi was lying on the bed, looking at the smiling faces, he couldn't help laughing. After taking the medicine for a few days, the discomfort in his chest basically disappeared, and the pain in his leg was much better. The medicine Gu Yunjiao prescribed for him contained medicinal materials to reduce swelling and relieve pain. He found that eating now has become something to look forward to. Even he couldn't help but look forward to something delicious on the table today. Beef stewed potatoes reached the pinnacle of Gu Yunjiao's cooking skills. Several children couldn't stop eating. After dinner, Gu Yunjiao called out to Gu Chuan, clean up the dishes. You'll be there to help when Sanya washes the dishes in a while. Chen Shi hurriedly said, no, he's a boy, and it's not easy to enter the kitchen. Gu Yunjiao shook her head, it doesn't matter whether it's a boy or a girl, since you live in this family, you have to do your part. She said to Gu Chuan, in the future, when my sister cooks, you have to watch by the side and learn slowly. You know, boys who can cook are the most attractive. She smiled and rubbed Gu Chuan's head. Gu Chuan was stunned for a moment, raised his small fist, well, I must study hard. Zhang Yuzi, who was lying on the bed, suddenly had a thought in his mind, should he learn to cook in the future? While Sanya and Gu Chuan were washing dishes, Gu Yunjiao went back to the room, bolted the door, and stepped into the space. After entering, she went straight to the fine material counter, took out all the Panax Noto ginseng and counted them one by one. Counted it once, 27. Obviously she took one and turned it into powder and put it in Zhang Yuzi's medicine, there should be 26 left. Gu Yunjiao didn't believe in evil, she counted it 3 times in a row, and it was still 27. She looked at the bottle of musk again, and suddenly understood that this medicine store seemed to transcend time and space, and the contents inside would always remain the same. Originally, Gu Yunjiao planned to open a pharmacy by herself after leaving the Zhang family, but now, the idea of opening a pharmacy became stronger. She has inexhaustible medicinal materials, and it would be a waste to not open a pharmacy. After confirming what she was thinking, Gu Yunjiao quickly came out of it. After she came out and sat at the table, Gu Yunjiao thought about it carefully. Where should she go to open a pharmacy? There is a town 2 miles away from Qingshan village, but the town is too small and has no population. I am afraid that it will not be able to make a business in 10 days and a half. These days, in the countryside again, everyone is poor, and they won't go to the pharmacy unless they have to. It is not possible to go to the county. There is only one Wangjia pharmacy in the county. Judging from the population of the county, the market for a pharmacy is basically saturated. Today, when I went to the Wang family pharmacy to pick up the IOU, because it was not at the fair, there was no one inside, not even a ghost. Gu Yunjiao thought about it. If she wanted to open a pharmacy to make money, she had to go to Fukan. Fukan has a large population, and 1 or 2 more drugstore markets can also be digested.